All right, looks like it's 4:30. So, how's everyone today? Okay, everyone doing all right? So SA1 coming up tomorrow, right? So remember, SA1 is due at 11:59 p.m. tomorrow night. Submit it through Brightspace. Everyone has a bank of 7 free late days, meaning 7 days that you can turn in an assignment or assignments late without any penalty. So if you need additional time to work on it, again, you can take 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, turn it in without any penalty. Are there any questions about the essay or turning it in or anything? Good, all right. So again, if there's any questions about it or if there's any last minute help I can do, feel free to talk to me after class or send me an email. The other thing is, believe it or not, we are almost at our midterm for the class. So 2 weeks from yesterday is the midterm of the class, which is, what day is it again? October 27th. So Monday, October 27th is the midterm. So up on Brightspace. And I'll send out a reminder about this too so you can see. I've posted the review sheet for the midterm. So in the content section, right, exam materials, you should be able to find it. And again, I'll send around the link later. You've got a review sheet that basically explains what the midterm will cover and what you can do to study and prepare for it. Okay, so I'll talk more about the midterm later, but now this is up, so you can start looking through it, start preparing for it when you are ready. Okay? All right. So again, midterm review sheet. All right, so let's finish talking about the Persian. Any other questions or anything? All right, so we're going to finish talking about the Persian Wars then. Make sure you have the document, The Life of Aristides. We're going to talk about Aristides in a little bit, talking about the Athenian democracy. All right, so Persian Wars. We left off talking about Battle of Thermopylae, right? So again, one of these famous battles that take place during the Persian invasion, right? The Greeks are betrayed when someone shows Xerxes and the Persians the back pathway to get behind them, right? So most of the Greeks retreat, except for King Leonidas, the 300 Spartans, and the 700 Thespians who stay to fight with them. And they are defeated to a person. And we talked about basically the portrayal of the Greeks in Herodotus's account, right? So especially like the 2 Spartans who had been dismissed because of the eye injury. They were blind, yet one goes and fights and dies immediately. The other one goes back home and gets shamed. And what this tells us kind of about Spartan values. So that's what we talked about, right? So to finish up, with this kind of effort to hold the Persians at Thermopylae up here, right? With this has failed, it basically leaves the Persians a wide open highway to advance into Attica. And advance they do. So they move into Attica, they end up sacking the city of Athens, doing much destruction. But the Athenians, for the most part, aren't there, right? Thermopylae was supposed to buy them time, where they evacuated via their navy to the nearby island of Salamis. The Persians then, after devastating Athens, move on to basically seal the deal and defeat the Athenians at Salamis. But this turns out to be a rousing victory for the Athenians by virtue of their navy, which, if you remember, is a relatively recent development, right? After the first Persian invasion in 490, the Athenians they discovered a new silver mine, and the statesman Themistocles makes the argument that, hey, instead of giving everyone a bonus, we should take this money and invest in new ships. His argument wins, Athens builds up its navy with kind of new modern ships, and this is going to prove to be the difference maker, right? Where they're going to turn aside the Persian fleet in a big battle, and again, win a resounding victory. This will be soon followed up by a land battle, right? At Plataea, up here on the map, right? Where this is where the kind of main Persian ground forces are. They're going to be met by a Greek army, led by the Spartan general and regent Pausanias. So after the death of Leonidas, one of the kings, his underage son, his child son, ascends to the throne, but he's a child, he's like 5, I think, at the time, right? He's not going to do much leading. So his uncle, Pausanias, so a member of the royal family, and kind of leading Spartan general, is going to be in charge. He is going to lead the Greek forces, as I said, again, resounding land victory over the Persians. The Persians then are forced, all that remain, are forced to retreat back home. So this is the end of the Persian invasion, but not necessarily the war. Okay, so why are the Persian Wars significant? So a couple things to keep in mind, right? One, our perspective, and we talked about this in our last class, is largely one-sided, right? We get the Greek view of things, and especially the anti-Persian Greek view of things. That gives us a kind of particular description of the Persians, of the war, but it doesn't necessarily match the larger reality. Case in point, right? There were some Greeks that were happy to be part of the Persian Empire. This was seen as a turning point in Greek history for reasons that we'll talk about today. And in fact, historians use this as a turning point, right? We were talking about the Archaic period earlier, right? The end of the Persian Wars is used to mark the beginning of what we call the Classical period, right? So both the Greeks themselves and modern historians see this as kind of a pivotal turning point moment. This victory is going to be a major source of pride for the Greeks and especially the Athenians. They're going to go back to this, we defeated the Persians, a lot over the next 100 years. If you remember, Persia was the biggest, most powerful, richest, most cosmopolitan state in the world. And here, right, the ragtag bunch of Greeks turned them back, right? Now remember, when we say defeat the Persian Empire, it means that they kind of stopped the invasion. The Persian Empire is still there. It's still the biggest, most powerful, richest state in the world at the time, right? So again, take defeat with a grain of salt. But the Greeks, and especially the Athenians, lean into it, right? So those who fought at Marathon, where the first Persian invasion was turned aside, they basically got to attach like a special title, a special honorific to their name, right? So this would be like myself introducing myself as like, Professor Perry, Victory, Victor at Marathon for the rest of my life. So again, a way of kind of, showing one's exalted status. Public art is all about, defeating the Persians, literature. It's a big, big theme, right? So the Greeks, and especially the Athenians, lean into this. It reinforces the idea of Greekness and Panhellenism, right? The Persians are the prototypical barbarian, right? The other. They are despotic under a king, right? Instead of free. They have hubris or kind of excessive pride. They're slavish in following the king, right? They're overindulgent. They're all things that the Greeks said they were not. And so this is a triumph of Greek character or Pan-Hellenic character over the barbarian character. One quick example, which I'll read to you because then I have to go on. Got to pull this one out. So this is after the Battle of Thermopylae. And the Persians are looking to force their advantage. And to read you from 826 here, Xerxes is looking for information on the state of the Greek army after Thermopylae, right? Have they broken? Have they dispersed? How big is the army that remains? So Herodotus writes, There had come to them, the Persians, a few deserters, men of Arcadia, lacking a livelihood and desirous to find some service. So basically some Greeks who are looking to serve as mercenaries. Bringing these men into the king's presence, the Persians inquired of them what the Greeks were doing. Right? This is soon after Thermopylae. There being one who put this question in the name of all. When the Arcadians told them that the Greeks were holding the Olympic festival and viewing sports and horse races. So what was the Olympic festival? What were the Olympics? What was the point?
Weren't they competitions?
Yep, they were competitions. They were athletic competitions. They were also, Chris?
Like a symbol of Greek pride?
A symbol of Greek pride, right? Because they weren't just athletic competitions. What were they part of? Right? Religious ceremonies too, right? So again, it was kind of combined athletic games, big religious ceremony in honor of the goddess Hera, right? She was connected to the site of Olympia, and Chris is exactly right, right? It is a prime example of Panhellenism. All the Greeks from different city-states come together to celebrate their religion, to celebrate their identity. So this is what's happening at Thermopylae, right? There's been this crushing defeat at the Persians, and now the Greeks are celebrating the Olympic Games. So the Persian asked the Arcadians, what was the prize that was offered, right? For which they competed. So what were they seeking to win? The Arcadians told them of the crown of olive that was given to the victor, right? Like a wreath that was made out of olive branches. Then Tigranes, the son of Artabanus, uttered a most noble saying, but the king deemed him a coward for it. So something that Herodotus says this is noble, but the king couldn't recognize this. Xerxes viewed it as cowardice. For when he heard that the prize was not money, but a crown, he, right, this Persian guy, could not hold his peace, but cried, "Good heavens, Mardonius." Mardonius was like the supreme Persian general. "What kind of men are these you have pitted us against? It is not for money they contend, but for glory of achievement." Such was Tigranes' saying. So why is this a noble statement? According to Herodotus. Briar.
Since they can't be bought off with riches, they're much more difficult to defeat.
I mean, it's connected to that, but he's not talking about them basically being bought off. What's he talking about?
Fighting.
What's he referencing? Not fighting. What are the Greeks doing? After Thermopylae, what are the Greeks doing? The Arcadians, right, kind of the Greek turncoats, come and say, the Greeks are, we just talked about it, celebrating the Olympics, the Olympic Games, right, this big Pan-Hellenic festival. And the Persians are like, okay, so like, what are they competing for? What are they seeking to win? They are investing this kind of time and effort. What's the prize?
The crown?
The crown. What kind of prize is that?
More of like a symbolic thing than anything.
There you go. It's a piece of wood. It's a piece of olive wood, right? One of the most common things that you can find in Greece. It is a symbolic thing. It's a sign of, you won, right? That you beat all of these other peoples, right? But it's not worth anything. So again, he cries out, right? My God, right? Good heavens, what kind of men are these that you have pitted us against? Right? The Greeks, who the Persians are fighting. It is not for money that they contend or compete, but for the glory of achievement. So again, what's that saying about the Greeks? What motivates them?
Glory.
Glory. What does it mean to be motivated by glory? We might see this as a bad thing, but the Greeks would see it as a good thing. Anthony,
Trying to be the best of the best.
try to be the best of the best, right? And how are you going to show that you're the best of the best?
Competition, engagements.
Competition, right? Competing with the other, racers to show that you are the best of the best. What do you win for all this work and effort and strain and struggle? Glory. Recognition that you are the best. Why does this one person, Tigranes, freak out about this? Why does he freak out?
Shows that like he shouldn't engage them because they're so formidable. So it kind of like,
Why are they
Makes-
formidable?
because of their, competition that they can build up their army.
Hardly for competition, right? He's like, they're competing to win what? Glory and not money. What's motivating them?
Pride?
Pride? What's motivating?
I'd say like almost like legacy.
Legacy,
Yeah.
right?
Influence?
Influence, right? What kind of influence do you think?
Like popularity?
Popularity, sure. Right? All of these things attached with glory. Why is that scary? That they're doing it for pride and influence and not for money.
It shows that they're really determined
That they're really determined. How do you know they're really determined?
because they're like shown in a way that I want to. Well, you said like they want to be recognized in a way. So
Mhm.
like as they, I don't know, like achieve or like keep on like, I don't know how to explain it, like I don't know how to explain it. Sorry.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
They're not like attracted to like a specific object. That means you can't really take it away. In a sense, you can't really take the glory away. It's not something.
If I told you that, all right, this person goes and works a 40-hour job to get a paycheck, everybody would be like, okay, sure, right? And this other person works a 40-hour job for nothing, but just wants to show that he's the best at accounting that there ever was. Why might this guy be, say, scary if you were in an accounting competition? Brian,
Maybe they don't fear death,
okay, maybe they don't fear death.
and to the Persians, might be like, oh, these people are kind of crazy. It's like fighting a fanatic.
Okay, sure. I mean, there's probably a little bit of that there.
Their passion is solely dedicated to this and not to any monetary value.
It's not about money, right? It's not about earthly rewards. It's not about pleasure, right? They're getting all the pain and none of the tangible benefit from this. What's the benefit that they want? Just recognition, glory, to be remembered, right? And again, maybe the fanatic thinks kind of look, like these people are hardcore, right? People that are going to do all of this stuff just because they want to be remembered, just because they want to be great, right? There's an intensity there. Like they're taking this seriously. They're not just doing it to get a paycheck, right? But again, this is incomprehensible to the Persian king. Because the Persians, right, are all about luxury and living the good life, right? So why else would you fight except to live the good life, right? But the Greeks are fighting, again, to be remembered and for their values, right? Which is, things come up in other sections, right? So again, showing that they have very different motivations, they have very different characters. Last thing I'm going to point out here, right, is we said during the Archaic period, Athens was a insignificant to middling city-state in terms of power. But the Persian Wars are going to transform Athens into a superpower, right? This is where Athens is going to become one of the top dogs. And a big reason for this is going to be the Athenian navy, right? Because of the silver mine and because of the Persian Wars, the Athenians are going to end up with basically the top navy in the Eastern Mediterranean. Okay, so let's move on here. All right, so the Athenian Empire. I just mentioned Athenians are going to become top dogs, right? And the expansion of democracy. So, Persian invasion is turned back. As I mentioned, this is the beginning of the classical period. So historians call the classical period 479, end of the Persian invasion, to 323, death of Alexander the Great. More on that later, right? So we're now in classical Greece. After defeating the Persians, right, as I said, the war is not over. The Greek leaders are like, okay, it's time to take the war to them. We defended our own land, now we need to take the fight to the Persians, right? Soon after, there's going to be a big battle at Macaulay, which is going to be right here on the coast of Asia Minor. Again, it's going to be another big victory for the Greeks, and this is going to spark an Ionian revolt, where the Greek cities of Ionia, that had been part of the Persian Empire, are going to, most of them are going to revolt from the Persian Empire and declare their independence. After this, the Greek powers, right, which they had called themselves the Hellenic League, the Greek League, meet together at Byzantium to discuss the current state of affairs and their next steps. Now, the Hellenic League is currently being led by Pausanias, the Spartan regent and general who won the big battle at Plataea. During this meeting, many Greek representatives bring complaints about Pausanias and his leadership. They say that he is showing too much pride, that he's not acting like a general, but like a king, an Eastern king, a Persian king, where he is treating them as subjects, not as fellow soldiers. On top of that, there are whispers that Pausanias is plotting treason, that he is in fact in league with the Persian king, and working with the Persian king to make himself, Pausanias, king of Greece, an ally of the Persians. Are these true? Who knows? But Pausanias is recalled to Sparta to kind of basically answer to these charges, and he is going to basically die under poor circumstances. So, the Hellenic League basically falls apart. But the Greeks still want to take the fight to Persia. So they hold a meeting on the island of Delos the next year, right there. And they say, okay, Pausanias, that was a problem, he's dead now. Let's, kind of reestablish this alliance to fight the Persians. Athens and over 100 other city-states sign up. And this is the creation of what gets called the Delian League, right? The league formed on Delos. Goals: contain Persia, get money, right? Persia did a lot of destruction. Remember, they destroyed Athens, right? Want to get some money back so we can rebuild. And of course, good old revenge. Revenge is always a good motivator. There's going to be a big abstention from the Delian League. Sparta and all of its allies in the Peloponnesian League are like, you know what, we're done. We don't need to fight Persia anymore. No thank you. Okay? So Sparta and its allies, if you remember allies kind of being strong-armed into it, basically don't join. A couple theories why they might have done this. We don't really know for sure. Maybe they were upset by the way that Pausanias had been treated by the other Greeks who accused him of trying to make himself a king. Or maybe they had concerns about kind of the growing power of Athens. Because who's the driving force here? Athens. So Sparta and the Peloponnesian League take a pass. Okay, questions? Okay, so the way the Delian League is going to work is that the sanctuary of Apollo, right? So the big complex dedicated to the god Apollo on the island of Delos is going to be the headquarters of the league. And that's where they're going to keep their treasury. So Greek city-states who are part of the league can either essentially donate ships or donate money. And the money will be stored at the treasury there for operation costs and for building new ships. This sea-based organization, right, naval-based organization, will work to accomplish these goals. All right, so the way it's supposed to work is every member of the league is supposed to have one vote. There's going to be an assembly meeting on Delos once a year. The assembly, again, one vote per city-state, will decide on a course of action. And then Athens, since it's kind of the leading force and it has the biggest navy, will be responsible for executing these decisions. So again, the league as a whole makes decisions, and then Athens, as kind of the executive officer, will handle the organization and make it happen. Sounds good in theory. Okay. Stepping up to kind of be a big leader in the league is the Athenian Cimon. Cimon was from an important aristocratic family in Athens. His father was Miltiades, the leading Athenian general who had kind of engineered the defeat of the Persians at their landing on the plain of Marathon in 490. He was also a protege of the politician Aristides, who you read about and who we're going to talk about in a second. Okay, so Cimon is going to be, again, kind of a leading force working with the league, right? And they're going to be very successful at first. Kind of under Cimon's leadership, the Persians are going to be expelled from Thrace, this region up there, kind of around, you see up to the north of Macedon, and in the Hellespont, kind of over that orange region under the Black Sea, right? So that had all been occupied by the Persians. Cimon and the Delian League are going to win a series of big victories, basically forcing the Persians out. So, sometime around the year 475 BCE, the representative from Naxos, the name of an island, and also the city-state, the polis, that occupied the island. They say, you know what? I think we're done. We have accomplished our mission, right? We've taken the fight to the Persians. We've kicked them out of these big, rich regions. We've won lots of treasure. Mission accomplished. We're going to step out. The Athenians say, no, you're not. You're not leaving the league. They then essentially impound the Naxian navy, saying, your ships are now part of the Delian League, and from now on, right, you are required to not send ships, but in fact, to give money to the treasury. Okay, so this is a significant turn of events. The league is no longer voluntary. Okay, questions here? All right. So, a few years later, we get a big battle, the Battle of Eurymedon. Again, it's in Asia Minor. It's kind of like way over here. Deep in Persian territory. This is a massive victory, right? Bigger than already the big victories that happened before, right? The victories keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? It's huge. So, after this point, right, people start raising questions. Other city-states start asking, okay, mission accomplished, right? You know, is the league still necessary? Do we still need to kind of be contributing ships and money and fighting? The Athenians say, yes, the league is still necessary. And no, you're not allowed to leave. Moreover, the Athenians say the league has to get bigger. So they start soliciting new members to join. By solicit, I mean the Athenian Navy shows up in a city-state and says you're now part of the Delian League. Congratulations. And for all of these members that join, again, they don't have the option to provide ships. They are required to send money to fund the operations of the Delian League. So at this point, modern historians say, really what has happened, right, is the Delian League has shifted to become the Athenian Empire. It's no longer a voluntary alliance made up of people kind of contributing troops and ships, but for the most part, it's Athens, right, running things, in control of almost the entire navy, and basically forcing people to contribute money and support. Okay, so we have an Athenian empire. All the cities making up the Delian League. All right, now this is going to be coupled with the expansion of democracy in classical Athens. All right, everyone's heard of the word democracy, right? I hope so. Popular word that gets used. So, democracy, or actually in Greek, demokratia, is actually a new word that is coined to describe the government of Athens. So to put it another way, it's not that the government of Athens was a democracy, but the word democracy was created to describe the government of Athens. What it means is a government like Athens' government at first. Does that kind of make sense? So again, Athens develops its government first, which you've already kind of started this process. The word demokratia is coined to describe this new type of government that Athens has developed. Well, what is this new type of government? Well, the two words that make up demokratia. Demos, which means people, the inhabitants of the polis, and kratos, or krate, which is to have power, right? So again, like aristocracy, the best men, the aristoi, hold power. In a democracy, it's a form of government where the people, the demos, hold the power. All right, so Athens had long been an oligarchy. Athens was a government where your wealth determined your political abilities. Okay? So how does this become a government where the demos hold the power? Well, right here. Okay, so Persian Wars, right? Athenian navy was a big deal and continues to be a big deal under the Delian League. Now, the Athenian navy opens up a new opportunity for the lowest class of Athenian citizens, the Thetes. So you remember, Athens was divided into 4 wealth classes, right? The 500 bushel men, the Pentecost Medimnoi, right? The knights, hippes, right? The yokemen, or the zugetes, and at the bottom, the Thetes. And it was the zugetes, the knights, the yokemen, right? That represented kind of the cutoff of people who could afford the weapons, the armor, to serve in the army. And that was kind of the justification for why the Thetes really didn't get any political power, is that they weren't contributing to Athens in the same way because they couldn't serve in the army. But now things have changed. Athens' land-based army is still there, but it's pretty insignificant compared to its navy. Its navy is the engine of Athens' growth. And if you have lots of ships with oars, what else do you need to make the navy work?
The rowers, people.
The rowers, right? The people to pull the oars. And this is where the Thetes come in, right? As the Athenian navy expands, there are opportunities for Thetes to serve in the navy as rowers on the triremes, right? Because you don't have to buy arms and armor in order to do it. And as the navy becomes increasingly important to Athens' well-being and political standing, so too is the position of the Thetes is going to rise as well, because they are integral to the operation of the Athenian navy. So what we're going to see is that the Athenian government becomes more and more, quote unquote, democratic over the course of the 5th century. So 487, so this is before the end of the Persian Wars though, the Athenians changed the way that archons are selected. So if you remember, the archons are the executive officers, kind of the highest magistrates, and they can only come from the highest wealth class. And initially, they were elected. 487, a new rule. Each year, a body of 40 men will be elected. So you're going to elect a pool of 40 men to be archons. Then, out of this pool of 40 men, you're going to draw 9 names. Right? And that these 9 names that you draw at random out of the pool, they're going to be the archons for the year. Okay. So why do you think this makes a difference? Right? So this drawing names is called sortition. What's the difference, or why does it make a difference to choose magistrates by sortition as opposed to election, do you think?
Now, anyone can be in power.
Not anyone. Because again, one, there's an election before this, right? So you're electing 40 men into the pool, and 2, still only the richest Athenians are eligible. So why not just elect the 9? Why put in this whole complicated thing that we're going to elect 40 candidates and then draw 9 by random, or by random line? Chris?
Makes it more like random, so like the person doesn't really decide, it's just like up to chance basically.
Okay, so why is that worth doing? What benefit does that bring, right?
Preventing people from becoming tyrannical in their search for power, like lobbying, bribing. If it's at random and only 1 year, that decreases the chances of political corruption.
There you go, right? Or if not corruption, what else does it maybe kind of decrease or limit? What do you think? Abdul?
I was gonna say, like rallying together and stuff.
Okay, right?
To get support,
Forming alliances in order to do, what's the goal of the alliance?
to gain support.
In order to?
For,
If you're electing archons to be leaders of Athens, why might you form an alliance? What's the end goal?
okay.
Well, I mean, theoretically, no. Possibly yes, right? Theoretically, though, you don't want to be king, you want to be archon. And why do you form an alliance? What are you looking for? What do you need to make yourself archon? If archons are elected, what do you need to make yourself archon?
Be wealthy,
Why?
because most of the archons,
Well, they have to be wealthy no matter what to qualify.
yeah.
Don't overthink it. You need support. You need votes. Why do you form an alliance?
So we get support from the others.
You get support from other people, right? So like, okay, well, I know I'm not going to be an archon, but because I don't have as many supporters as Abdul does, but maybe we'll form an alliance. I'll tell my supporters to vote for him. He gets more votes. What do I get out of the deal? What are you going to promise me?
Success.
Maybe success or help or, seat at the table or something like that, right? So again, it encourages kind of factionalism. It encourages kind of power brokering. And again, Abdul's looking to increase his own power to become archon. I'm not doing this just out of the goodness of my heart, right? To form this alliance. I'm looking for something too, right? So again, there's this kind of interest in kind of self-serving, kind of actions in order to increase one's personal power. This is supposed to limit it, right? Well, if there's no election to be archon, there's no need to make alliances or anything like that, right? There's no need to promise someone additional power because it's all up to chance. So again, a way of maybe limiting ambition or, kind of the personal exercise of power, because if I don't have votes to offer, if it's all decided by luck, I can't really profit from it the same way, right? So it's about kind of limiting kind of the individual power of these aristocrats. Soon after, they expand the pool of people to be eligible to be archon. So it was the richest, and now kind of the second richest individuals, the Hippes, become eligible, right? The Athenians also decide that they're going to elect their generals. Each year, they will elect 10 individuals, one from each of the new tribes established by Cleisthenes. These 10 generals will jointly be responsible for military affairs for the year, right? And they're eligible for re-election. Okay? So this is, in theory, trying to kind of open up the office of general, right? They don't want to completely leave it to chance because you don't want to be drawing military leaders' names out of a hat. But this is going to kind of backfire. It's going to turn out to be a very, very powerful office because individuals can hold the office of general year after year after year after year. Right? More on that later. And the development of 487, ostracism. An important, or at least symbolically important, element of the Athenian democracy. And ostracism was supposed to be a judgment-free process. By that I mean it was not an indication that someone had committed a crime or necessarily done something wrong. Someone who was ostracized was compelled to leave the city of Athens for 10 years. Go anywhere he wanted, no additional penalty, just wasn't allowed to be in Athens or be involved in Athenian political affairs for 10 years. After 10 years, he could return, it could be business as usual. Okay? So again, theoretically, this is how it's supposed to work. It is supposed to be, again, not a punishment per se, but a process. How it worked. In the popular assembly, once per year, a maximum of one time per year, someone could hold a vote for an ostracism. The first vote would be, shall there be an ostracism this year? People would vote yes or no. If the majority was no, no ostracism, had to wait for the next year. If the vote was yes, then it would go on to the next stage. So at first, shall there be an ostracism? Yes? No. Yes wins. Okay, there's going to be an ostracism this year. 2 months later, there's a second vote. Who should be ostracized? Here, people could vote for whoever they believed should be ostracized, should be forced to leave Athens for 10 years. You could vote for whoever you want. The way you voted was through secret ballot. The ballots were potsherds, which were called in Greek ostraca. That's where the name ostracon comes from. You would get a broken piece of pot, you would carve onto it the name of the person who you wanted ostracized, and then you would put it in the urn. Up here we have some names of some famous Athenians who received votes for ostracism at one point. Pericles, the son of Xanthippus, who we'll talk about in a second. Cimon, the son of Miltiades, who we just talked about. And Aristides, the just. So, whoever gets ostracized, if there's a minimum of 6,000 votes cast, whichever name got the most votes was ostracized. That means if there were 6,000 votes cast, 5,998 people all voted for someone different, 2 people voted for me, I would now be ostracized and forced to leave Athens for 10 years. All right, so what do you think the purpose of ostracism was? Why was this established? Right.
Probably to oust people who were bad for the community. Also, especially if someone's in power and they haven't done very well, this might be a way to prevent them from gaining more power.
Okay. Could be a way of keeping people from gaining more power. Sure. What do you think,
Show
Chris?
that there are consequences for poor leadership.
Consequences for poor leadership. Sure.
Be for corruption?
Could be for corruption. Now, the problem with some of your arguments, right? Not a problem, but something again that again you wouldn't necessarily know, is that there was already an avenue for prosecuting those things. If someone was corrupt, you wouldn't ostracize them, right? right? Because again, think about the procedure there, right? You would take him to court, you would get him convicted, you'd probably get him executed. If someone was a failure, you also take him to court for that too. Failure was a crime, essentially in Athens. All right, so if someone wasn't doing a good job, why wait for once a year possible ostracism? Take him to court, get him convicted, get him punished. Ostracism, again, was supposed to be, theoretically, not a punishment. Abdul.
For the sake of democracy.
For the sake of democracy, yes, that's exactly what an Athenian would say.
So to protect, like just keep it stable.
How does this help protect democracy?
Let's say like somebody's getting too much power and they say like, oh, we might want him to stay in power for forever or something. They might want to get rid of him because it's gonna like cancel democracy.
So again, what has he done wrong?
Just getting too much power.
Right, yeah, so not necessarily someone who's broken a law, but someone who might be threatening democracy in some way, maybe getting too much power. Maybe leading the people in the wrong direction, but not quite failure or breaking the law. Right? But again, very much that's how the Athenians describe it, right? It's a way to protect the democracy. And again, what's the democracy in Athens? What's the word mean? What do they mean when they say democracy? The people
Power.
having power, right? The people having the authority. Okay, so let's turn to our primary source reading, kind of primary source in quotes, because this is a much later reading on Aristides. So again, this is written by a later author during the Roman period, but again, it's kind of our best source. He's drawing upon earlier authors whose works don't survive. But we have to kind of take what he says with a grain of salt. All right, so who was Aristides? What do we know about him? So again, this is primary source number 10, right? Life of Aristides. What do we know about him? What do you know? Abdul.
Statesman.
He was an Athenian statesman, right? As kind of an all-purpose term, meaning someone who was, kind of a leadership figure in Athenian politics. What else do we know about him?
Belonged to the tribe of Antiochus.
Okay, so that was his tribal. Antiochus was his tribe, right? The deme Alopeshi, right? So we get his kind of lineage. Those are, pretty common descriptions. There were lots of statesmen, lots of members of the tribe. How did Aristides stand out? Let's talk first about his rival. He had a very, very famous rival. Themistocles. Who was Themistocles? We encountered him before.
Wasn't he a general?
He was. He was a general. Themistocles was involved in the Persian Wars. Not the Battle of Marathon. That's going to be Miltiades. And in fact, Aristides is also going to be at the Battle of Marathon. He's going to be the kind of number 2 general in charge. But what about Themistocles? What do we know about Themistocles?
He was considered to be like a champion of the people.
He was a champion of the people. What's the big thing we encountered him that he was responsible for doing in the Persian War? Related to kind of Athenian success? He was the champion of?
Wait. He was the one who said we should use the money and build a stronger navy?
For the Navy, right? So he was the champion of the Navy, right? That also kind of makes him the champion of the people, too. What's the connection between being the champion of the Navy, like this is the direction we want to take Athens, and being kind of a popular figure, a champion of the people? What's the connection between the two? Chris?
The rowers.
The rowers, right. What did the Navy do? New opportunities for, again, the thieves, right? The lowest class people. And they are going to be very kind of like very happy with these opportunities, right? That these represent kind of new not only economic opportunities for them, but kind of political growth for them, right? So Themistocles is going to kind of be seen as their champion. So he is a hero of the Persian War, right? He's one of the big Greek heroes, both for his kind of political decision making and leadership, as well as his military efforts, right? Themistocles is going to be considered one of these Athenian heroes, and he is Aristides' chief rival. Okay, so politically, what makes Aristides different than Themistocles? If Themistocles is a champion of the people, Aristides is,
Didn't he advocated much more of a meritocracy?
or, that's another word for meritocracy. Meritocracy is kind of a difficult word at this point.
Democracy.
No,
Aristocracy?
aristocracy. So in chapter 2 on page 2, right, Aristides was an intimate friend of that Cleisthenes who set the state in order after the expulsion of the tyrants. Very true. Also seen as a founder of democracy. So Aristides also admired and emulated above other statesmen Lycurgus the Lacedaemonian. Who was Lycurgus the Lacedaemonian?
Wasn't he a statesman for Sparta?
Yeah, and not just a statesman. He's called a
Sparta, they made democracy. I mean, not democracy, but yeah.
Sparta's thing.
Laws, yeah.
Right. Whatever made Sparta Sparta, Lycurgus was responsible for it, right? He was the lawgiver who set up the kind of Spartan system, right? Which again is become kind of almost in a way symbolic with oligarchy at this point, right? So again, he admired and emulated above all other statesmen Lycurgus the Lacedaemonian. He therefore favored an aristocratic form of government, and ever had opposed to him, as the champion of the people, Themistocles, the son of Neocles. Okay, so again, talks a lot about this competition between the two, right? Chapter 3, we get a little sense of this kind of early Athenian, we'll put in quotes now, democracy at work. However, since Themistocles was a reckless agitator, that's a pretty negative view of Themistocles that we don't see in, necessarily in other sources, right? A reckless agitator, and opposed and thwarted him, Aristides, in every measure of state. Aristides himself also was almost compelled, partly in self-defense, and partly to curtail his adversary's power, which was increasing through the favor of the many, to set himself in opposition to what Themistocles was trying to do, thinking it better that some advantages should escape the people than that his adversary, by prevailing everywhere, should become too strong. So, what does this say about Aristides? How did he kind of act politically?
He was willing to start fights with others, like political fights with others?
With who?
With Aristides.
Well, Aristides is who we're talking about. He was willing to fight with Themistocles, his rival. And not just fight. Like, they weren't just necessarily, they were opponents, but what does this sentence say here about what was motivating Aristides?
It says partly to curtail his adversary's power.
So who's that?
Themistocles.
So partly to curtail Themistocles' power. What did he do? It's the clause before that, right? Since Themistocles was a reckless power. Oh, I'm sorry, no, that's describing Themistocles was an agitator. Themistocles was opposed to Aristides. In order to curtail Themistocles' power, what did Aristides do? What comes right after that?
He set himself in opposition.
Yeah, he set himself in opposition to what Themistocles was trying to do. What does that mean?
Like not try to fight him.
Nope. He set himself in opposition to what? I might even say to whatever Themistocles was trying to do.
Did he block one of his proposals?
He did. This is kind of part of it. If Themistocles wanted something, what was Aristides' response? Rejected. If Themistocles proposed the law, how was Aristides going to vote? No. If Themistocles said yes, Aristides said no. That's what it's saying. So automatically, if it was something that kind of Themistocles wanted or proposed, Aristides set himself against it. To the point that, thinking it better that some advantages should escape the people, than that his adversary, by prevailing everywhere, should become too strong. So he would vote against Themistocles no matter what, even if Themistocles' proposal was going to do what? Even if it was going to better Athens and better the people, Aristides voted against it. Why? Okay. He was his rival, but this at least tries to couch it in kind of more noble terms, right? Who? He didn't want Themistocles to become, so he said, look, it's better that the people maybe not get everything that's good for them. It's better that that happen as opposed to Themistocles getting too much power. Themistocles getting too much power is too dangerous for Athens. So if this means, well, the people have to suffer a bit, that's the better option. Because Themistocles is that dangerous, is kind of what this is saying about Aristides' belief, right? But again, this is an intense rivalry, okay? Not just opponents, but like just an automatic vote against him. You get this great line, right? Down a little bit further, he says, Aristides declared as he left the assembly that there was no safety for the Athenian state unless they threw both Themistocles and him into the death pit, right? Basically, so long as they were both there, or one of them was still there, right? There was no safety, right? You basically, they're too dangerous. Okay. So what was Aristides' nickname? He was known as the Just. Aristides the Just. And why was he called the Just?
Because he showed like his continuous like commitment to be like opposed to
No.
Themistocles. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Just Themistocles.
Themistocles, sorry.
But it's kind of more, it's supposed to be more than that. So that's maybe he's supposed to maybe be doing that for noble reasons. But kind of what's he committed to? Even beyond just being an opponent to Themistocles.
Wouldn't he also be a champion for the people?
In a way, how is he a champion of the people? Normally a champion of the people means kind of supporting the common people in whatever way possible. And that's Themistocles. So, Ryan, do you have something? Or no? Okay. What's he?
Wouldn't he like defend people in court? I think he defended a specific individual because he wasn't able to give his take on like what happened. So he was getting convicted. He wasn't able to get like a proper defense because they wouldn't let him.
And even more than that, Aristides was the prosecutor. So Aristides is prosecuting this guy, and his prosecution is like basically so good, the jury's like, oh well, all right, we're done. This guy's guilty. Right? Don't even need a defense speech. He's guilty. And Aristides, who's prosecuting him, says, no, he must, get his chance to defend himself. What's he committed to? Fairness. We might say justice, right? But again, what does justice or fairness mean in this case? Do you think? In what way? Democracy means lots of things at this time. What does justice and fairness mean kind of at this point? What are you supposed to do? Aristides was prosecuting this guy, right? I mean, he probably thought this guy was guilty. Why should this guy get an opportunity to speak?
Self-representation.
Why? But why should he be given that chance?
Fairness.
Okay, fairness. He has the right, right? Where does that come from? Yeah, you can't. Democracy is it's too early to lean on democracy as a crutch because it doesn't mean what we think of it as today. So you're right? I mean, what is it? Why is it important?
Because he's Athenian.
Okay. But so what? Why should this guy?
Early Greek principles of fairness, humanism, equity.
Yeah, we're not quite there at equity and stuff like that yet.
Would it be like the laws from like Argus and like the foundational principles?
Right. So it's not so much as abstract as this, but this is what's supposed to happen. This is how the process is supposed to work. This is how the laws work. This is how the justice system works. Right? We need to basically follow these rules. The prosecution speaks, then the defense speaks. Right? And so it's fair in the sense that not necessarily that everyone gets treated equally, although Aristides is going to weigh in on that too, right? But that there's kind of a process where each person gets their say, and we need to kind of adhere to this process, right? So it's kind of a mixture of what everyone was saying, but I kind of wanted to make sure we got this idea that this was the way that it was supposed to happen as laid out by the law, right? And even more, right? Aristides says, I'm going to, treat everyone the same in the sense that I'm going to not come in with preconceived notions, except for maybe Themistocles, right? And judge what they say as opposed to how well I know them, right? Right?
Oh, no, sorry.
No, okay. All right. So Themistocles, though, gets into trouble, right? Because he goes around kind of offering his opinions or his justice, right? So in chapter 7 on page 8, now to resume, it befell Aristides to be loved at first because of this surname, the just, but afterwards to be jealously hated, especially when Themistocles set the story going among the multitude that Aristides had done away with the public courts of justice by his determining and judging everything in private. So again, this is getting turned against Aristides, right? Aristides is kind of helping to settle disputes, kind of making impartial judgments. But what does Themistocles accuse him of?
Becoming a monarchy.
Right, becoming a monarchy, getting rid of the public courts, deciding everything himself, right? That he had established for himself a monarchy. And besides that, people too must by this time have become greatly elated over their victory, and they thought nothing too good for themselves, and therefore were vexed with those who towered over the multitude in name and reputation. Right? So there was accusations that he wanted to create a monarchy, and why didn't the people like him? They were vexed with those who towered over the multitude in name and reputation.
Oh, but he went against his name.
Not that he went against his team. He thought he was better than everyone else. Or at least so they say. Everyone talks about Aristides the Just and his judging everything, and he's so famous. He thinks he's better than us. Why is that a problem? Whose power is growing at this point?
Because if he exalts himself to judge everyone, sooner or later he'll make himself a king.
Right? That's the first half of it. Then the second half is just he thinks he's better than everyone else.
Hubris?
Okay? Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. That's not the problem here. Even if he doesn't make himself a king,
Wouldn't it undermine justice?
how would it undermine justice?
Because wasn't he undermining the courts?
So that's the first accusation, that he was undermining the courts, that he was basically making himself a king. The second one is just that people thought that he thought he was better than everyone else. So even if he's not planning to make himself a king, why is that problematic? Who is supposed to hold the power?
The people.
And even if he's not a king, if his influence or status is too outsized, it diminishes the people's power, right? That he wields too much power or too much influence, and the people don't like that, right? So he gets ostracized, okay? So he's going to be driven, and in fact, we get the story, this is the very end, right? As the voters, the last paragraph, as the voters were inscribing their ostracon, it is said that an unlettered, so an illiterate fellow, handed his ostracon to Aristides and asked him to write Aristides on it. So he doesn't even know Aristides, right? But he runs into him and says, I can't write. Can you write the name Aristides on my ostracon? Aristides, astonished, asked the man what possible wrong Aristides had done him. None whatever, was the answer. I don't even know the fellow, but I am tired of hearing him called the Just. On hearing this, Aristides made no answer, but wrote his name on the ostracon and handed it back. Finally, as he was departing the city, he lifted up his hands to heaven and prayed, a prayer the opposite, as it seems, of that which Achilles made, that no crisis might overtake the Athenians, which should compel the people to remember Aristides, right? So, does Plutarch think Aristides was a good, just man or not?
I think he does.
Why?
I don't know, like the way he's describing me, just saying like he is just, because in that moment he could have wrote, how you pronounce his name?
Themistocles?
No, Aristides.
Oh, Aristides, yeah.
He said like Aristides, but somebody else.
Yeah, he could have wrote Themistocles on it, right?
But, instead,
But he writes his own name, so he's honest.
I think when he lifted his hand to heaven or something,
Right.
he said he didn't want like something bad happening to them.
Right. And this isn't, he doesn't want, and who's the them?
Go.
The Athenians, right? So, and this is in reference to a story from the Iliad where the hero Achilles is basically getting mistreated. He's like, all right, I'm going away, but I hope something bad happens, and then they all suffer and remember, well, this happened because I wasn't there to help him, right? So that was Achilles. Aristides does something different, right? He's being treated unfairly and forced to leave, and he prays, I hope nothing bad happens to the Athenians, right? So at least in Plutarch's eyes, he was truly a just person. Okay, let's move on, talk a little bit more here, right? Athens and Sparta. Okay, so things are not going well between Athens and Sparta. If you remember, right, with the formation of the Delian League, Sparta and its allies decide to take a pass. There were some other sources of tension as well, too. If you remember, right, after the Pisistrates were expelled, right, the tyrants were expelled, there was a debate between Isagoras and Cleisthenes about how the city was going to be run. Isagoras had the backing of the Spartans, but the Athenian people rise up and basically force the Spartans to leave. Themistocles, when he's rebuilding Athens, basically refortifies it, builds up new walls, even as the Spartans are like, no, that's too warlike, making the Spartans nervous that maybe the Athenians are preparing for war. And then Pausanias gets removed from his leadership position in the Hellenic League. He is accused of treason and trying to become a king, right? So there are already tensions between Athens and Sparta here. Now, on the flip side, there seem to be people who want to repair this relationship. Key among them, Cimon. So you remember, Cimon is the kind of rising Athenian leader working with the Delian League who is winning all of these victories. He is the most influential politician in Athens at the time. He names his son Lacedaemonius. Remember, Lacedaemonia is the name for the region which Sparta is in. Lacedaemon is another word for Sparta, right? So he basically names his son Sparta, kind of showing his kind of appreciation of Sparta. On the flip side, we have Themistocles, right? Who is very rabidly anti-Sparta. Sparta's the enemy. Sparta's the enemy. It seems that the pro-Spartans gain the advantage. For some reason, we don't know exactly what, Themistocles will be ostracized in 471. after he's ostracized, after he's already left the city, he's then going to be formally charged with treason against Athens. He's recalled to the city to stand trial, but instead Themistocles flees to Persia. Okay. Sometime in the mid-460s, Kimon is accused of bribery. He's going to be prosecuted by someone who's going to become increasingly important, a man by the name of Pericles, who is the protege of another important politician by the name of Ephialtes. I know we're getting lots of names here. All right. We hit the big deal. 464, there's a massive earthquake in the Peloponnesus. So if you remember the Peloponnesus, right, the southern area of Greece, down here, right, Sparta is the leading force in the Peloponnesus. The earthquake basically causes a lot of destruction, a lot of chaos. The Helots use this opportunity to revolt. Right? So remember the Helots, those who are kept as serfs by the Spartans, right? They revolt and basically fortify a mountain stronghold and are successfully holding off the Spartan armies coming after them. The situation gets serious enough that Sparta actually invokes the Hellenic League. So remember, the Hellenic League was the self-defense league that was formed to fight off the Persians. Then it kind of got disbanded, got replaced by the Delian League that Sparta's not involved in. Again, we don't have all sorts of details about why it gets so bad, but basically, Kimon's like, we got to reform the Hellenic League. Sparta needs help. In Athens, there is a major debate between Kimon and Ephialtes, right? Again, who was the main politician. Pericles was his protege. The debate, should we go and help Sparta? Kimon and the pro-Spartan side win out. They win the debate. The Athenian assembly authorizes an expedition where Kimon and 4,000 Athenian soldiers travel to Sparta to help against the Helots. Then something happens. We have no idea what. We're missing this information. The Spartans, when the Athenians show up, the Spartans say, no thanks, go home. So the Athenian army turns around and goes home, and this is a big kind of black mark for Kimon, right? It's seen as something kind of insulting or something even worse. The people are going to turn against him. Kimon will then immediately the next year be ostracized, forced to leave the city of Athens. And then right after that, Athens forms an alliance with Argos. Argos was another city in the Peloponnesus. Not too important for our purposes. Right, it's actually up here. This is not the map. But the big thing was Argos was kind of the traditional rival of Sparta for power in this region. So Sparta had always been top dog, but Argos had always been kind of number two under Spartan authority. So the fact that Athens becomes an alliance with Argos, which it technically can't do because Argos is already an ally with Sparta, long story short, right, is going to create a major diplomatic incident. All right, so I'm going to end here. I think we're out of time. We've got a little bit more, but we'll cover that